An Act of Parliament is a law that's been passed within the UK. When making an Act of Parliament, there's a very specific procedure that must be followed. It's a really long procedure, but that means it's really thorough, but it also means that it's really time consuming as well. The first stage of making an Act of Parliament is called the pre-drafting procedure. At this stage, the person who's making the bill, which will usually be a government minister, will propose his ideas and set out his kind of proposal for this new law. And that's called the Green Paper. So the Green Paper is him just releasing some general ideas to the public and different pressure groups. This is to basically help him kind of get feedback and kind of gauge people's views on the law before it becomes a formal becomes a formal bill and starts going through the procedure. It's useful to go through the Green Paper because it gets people's opinions. It can actually help to improve a proposal before it starts going through the Act of Parliament procedure. Once the Green Paper's been released, the feedback from the different from the public and pressure groups will be compiled, and then the White Paper will be released. The White Paper is the kind of formal proposal for the law that's going to be made, and will again be released to different to the public and pressure groups, and this time to Parliament. Now, after that those two stages, the bill will then be drafted by parliamentary draftsmen, which are basically skilled lawyers, and they will kind of write up the proposed Act of Parliament under the kind of descriptions and proposals laid out by the government minister. Now, the first proper stage of the Act of Parliament procedure is called the first reading. At the first reading, basically the title of the bill will be read out, usually in the House of Commons, but it can also be started at the House of Lords. After the title's been read out, there will be an informal vote. An informal vote will basically be the members of the House of Commons either shouting aye or no as to whether this bill should go ahead. At this stage, copies will also be made available. This is so the members of Parliament can go away and read the bill before the next stage. The next stage is called the second reading. At this stage, it's a much more detailed debate about the merits of the proposed Act of Parliament. Usually, if it's a kind of controversial bill, or if it's just quite an important bill, there'll be a debate that's not only based on the merits of the bill, but also on political grounds. So, if we take the current political party, for example, the Tories are in government, and so you'll often find the Labour Party trying to challenge all the laws made by the Tory party, not because they necessarily think they're a really bad idea, but just because they're trying to make the other party look bad in the public eye. In the second reading, everyone actually has the power, or it has the permission to talk and to say their opinion. At the end of the second reading, there'll be a more formal vote. The next stage is called the committee stage. At the committee stage, there'll be a selection of MPs who will go through the bill line by line. There'll usually be between about 16 to 50 MPs at this stage, but it's usually around 18. There are some times where the whole House will sit at this stage, and that's for really, really important bills that are being passed. So at the committee stage, they'll be going through every line of the proposed Act of Parliament, and they'll be looking for kind of mistakes or changes that should be made. However, the committee don't actually have any power at all. All they can do is suggest amendments. At the next stage, the report stage, the amendments that were suggested at the committee stage will be reviewed and debated upon. So every different amendment that's been suggested will be discussed, debated and voted upon, and each amendment will either be accepted or rejected. The next stage is called the third reading, and this is the kind of final review of the Act of Parliament that's been proposed. There'll be brief discussions about the bill, and there'll be a final vote. Small changes can be made at this stage, but nothing radical, just very small kind of errors that may have been found. Once they've all voted on it and they're all in agreement, the bill will then be bound in green ribbon. Once it's bound in green ribbon, it'll then be passed to the other house, which is the House of Lords. The House of Lords will follow the exact same procedure all the way from the first reading down to the third reading, just to kind of check, and they work as a balance to the House of Commons. The House of Lords can't actually reject a bill that's been passed by the Commons anymore. All they can do is kind of suggest amendments. What will often happen if the House of Lords do not agree to a bill that's been passed by the Commons is that it gets passed between the two houses repeatedly until a compromise can be reached. We call this ping-ponging, because the bill is passed repeatedly between the two houses until everyone is in agreement. However, sometimes, very rarely however, the Lords will never build a compromise on a bill that's been passed by the House of Commons. When this happens, the Commons are actually able to pass a bill without the House of Lords' permission, and this is under the Parliament Act of 1911 and 1949. It basically says that Commons can pass without the Lords' permission. The reason they have this little bit extra bit of power is because the House of Commons are voted into power, where the Lords have received their position through different reasons, but they're not voted in. Once both houses are in agreement, the House of Lords will tie the bill in a red ribbon, and then they'll pass it on to the final stage. The final stage is royal assent, and this is where the monarch of the day, so at the minute it would be Queen Elizabeth, passes the bill and it becomes law. However, nowadays the Queen or the monarch doesn't do that themselves. It's just the Queen's representative will stamp the Queen's seal onto the bill, and it'll become law from midnight that day, or at a designated time if the start date isn't that day.